My sister ruined my wedding by revealing our parents' darkest secret, and now my family is torn apart. My wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but it ended with my sister exposing a family secret so big that it shattered everything. I haven't spoken to my parents since, and now I'm left questioning everything I thought I knew about my family. Let me start by saying that my sister Lisa and I used to be close. Growing up, we were each other's best friends. She's only 2 years younger than me, so we shared everything: clothes, secrets, late-night talks about our futures. We fought like sisters do, but nothing that ever threatened our bond. I thought we would always be close, but clearly, I didn't know her as well as I thought. Fast forward to my wedding day, a day I had dreamed about for as long as I could remember. I was marrying the love of my life, Jake, and everything was going according to plan. We had a beautiful outdoor ceremony, followed by an intimate reception with our closest family and friends. I was on cloud 9, feeling like nothing could ruin this day. I should have known better. Lisa was my maid of honor, and she had been acting strangely leading up to the wedding. At first, I thought it was just wedding stress or maybe some jealousy that I was getting married before her. She had been with her boyfriend, Steve, for a few years, and while they weren't engaged yet, I knew she had been hoping for a proposal. I didn't want to assume anything, so I brushed off her weird behavior. But looking back, the signs were all there. The first red flag was when she skipped my bachelorette party, claiming she had a last-minute work emergency. Lisa works in PR, so I knew her job could be demanding, but this felt off. She'd been excited about planning the party for months, so to bail at the last minute was unlike her. Still, I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I figured we'd have plenty of time to celebrate after the wedding. Then, on the morning of the wedding, she was late to the bridal suite. I had to get ready without her, which stung. But again, I didn't want to cause drama. When she finally arrived, she barely looked at me, and her eyes were red like she'd been crying. I asked her if everything was okay, and she just mumbled something about allergies. It was clear she was upset, but I had no idea why. I should have pressed her, but I was too focused on getting married. I didn't think for a second that what was about to happen would change everything. The ceremony went off without a hitch. Lisa gave a short but sweet speech at the reception, though I noticed she seemed distracted. It wasn't until after the first dance that things started to spiral out of control. We were all seated for dinner when Lisa suddenly stood up. She wasn't scheduled to give another speech, but she grabbed the microphone and looked straight at me. My stomach dropped when I saw the look on her face. Anger, hurt, betrayal. She didn't look like my sister anymore. "I can't do this," she said, her voice shaking. "I can't keep pretending like everything is okay when it's not." The room went dead silent. I could feel every eye on me, on her, on my parents. My mom's face went pale, and my dad's jaw clenched. They knew something was coming, and so did I. Lisa took a deep breath and continued. "I found out something a few weeks ago, and I've been trying to figure out how to deal with it, but I can't hold it in anymore. Mom, Dad, you need to tell the truth. You've been lying to us for years." At this point, I was frozen. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I had no idea what she was talking about. Jake reached for my hand, but I could barely feel it. It was like the ground was slipping out from under me. My dad was the first to speak. "Lisa, this is not the time." "No, Dad, it is the time," she interrupted, her voice rising. "This is the only time. You've been keeping this secret for years, and it's time to come clean." Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't seem to care. She was on a mission, and nothing was going to stop her. I wanted to stand up, to stop her, to tell her that this wasn't the place for whatever she was about to say, but I couldn't move. I just sat there, waiting for the bomb to drop. And then it did. "Mom and Dad aren't your real parents, Jen. They adopted you when you were a baby, and they've been lying to you your entire life." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Everything around me went blurry, and all I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. What the hell was she talking about? "Mom and Dad aren't your real parents, Jen. They adopted you when you were a baby, and they've been lying to you your entire life." The room was dead silent. I couldn't breathe. It was like time had stopped and I was stuck in that one moment, unable to move or process what Lisa had just said. Adopted? Me? This had to be some kind of sick joke, right? Lisa must have misunderstood something. This couldn't be true. I turned to my parents, desperate for them to deny it, to tell me that Lisa was wrong, that she was just lashing out because she was upset about something else, but the looks on their faces told me everything. My mom had tears in her eyes, her hands trembling as she covered her mouth. My dad stared down at the table, refusing to meet my gaze. The guilt and shame were written all over them. "Is this true?" My voice came out barely above a whisper, but it felt like it took all the strength I had left to ask the question. Neither of them answered at first. The silence stretched on painfully long until finally, my mom nodded, a single tear sliding down her cheek. "Yes," she whispered, her voice cracking. "It's true." That was it. That was the confirmation I never wanted. The world as I knew it crumbled in that instant, right there in front of everyone I loved. My wedding day, the day that was supposed to be about joy, love, and new beginnings, had turned into a nightmare. "How could you not tell me?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger. "How could you keep something like this from me? I'm your daughter. I had a right to know." "We were going to tell you," my dad said, finally looking up at me, though his voice was weak. "We just didn't know how. And then the years kept passing and it got harder and harder. We didn't want to hurt you." "Didn't want to hurt me?" I laughed bitterly, though there was nothing funny about this situation. "Do you have any idea what this feels like? To find out on my wedding day, in front of everyone, that my whole life has been a lie?" By this point, people were starting to murmur around us. Jake's family looked horrified, and my friends exchanged awkward glances, unsure of what to do. Some people had even left their tables, probably uncomfortable with the drama unfolding before them. I couldn't blame them. I wanted to run away too. Lisa, who had been crying silently, finally spoke up again. "I'm so sorry, Jen. I didn't mean to ruin your day, but you needed to know the truth. I couldn't keep it from you anymore. I found out by accident a few weeks ago, and it's been eating me alive." "How did you find out?" I asked, not even sure if I wanted to hear the answer. But at this point, what more could be revealed? "I was cleaning out some old boxes in the attic and I found a letter," she said, wiping her eyes. "It was from your birth mother. It was hidden at the bottom of a box of Dad's old paperwork. I don't think they meant for anyone to ever find it." I glanced at my parents again, waiting for them to explain, but they just sat there, looking like they wished the ground would swallow them up. Lisa continued, her voice shaky. "I didn't know what to do with the information, but I couldn't look at you without feeling like I was lying to you. I confronted Mom and Dad, and they admitted it. They said they were going to tell you, but honestly, Jen, I didn't trust them to do it, not after keeping it a secret for so long." The betrayal I felt was overwhelming. Not only had my parents lied to me for my entire life, but Lisa had also known for weeks and said nothing until now, until she chose to drop this bombshell on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I felt like I was drowning in the lies. I pushed my chair back abruptly, standing up from the table. I needed air. I needed space, anything to escape the suffocating tension in that room. "I need to get out of here," I said, my voice trembling. Jake stood up with me, concern etched all over his face. "Jen, wait, let's talk," he started. But I shook my head. I couldn't deal with this right now. Not with him, not with anyone. "I can't," I whispered, and without another word, I turned and walked out of my own wedding reception. I don't even know how long I walked. I just wandered around the empty streets, still in my wedding dress, with tears streaming down my face. Everything felt surreal, like I was stuck in a terrible dream I couldn't wake up from. Adopted. How could they keep something like that from me? How could they build a whole life with me based on a lie? I was so lost in my thoughts that I didn't even realize Jake had followed me until he gently touched my shoulder. I jumped, turning around to face him. "Jen, please, just talk to me," he said softly. His face was full of concern, but also confusion. "I don't know what to say or do to help, but I'm here. We'll figure this out together, okay?" I looked at him trying to process everything, but my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. I was angry, hurt, betrayed, and most of all, I was confused. Who was I really? How could my parents, the people who raised me, just lie about something so huge for my entire life? "I don't even know who I am anymore," I whispered, feeling the weight of those words. "How do I move forward from this?" Jake wrapped his arms around me, pulling me close. "You're still the same person, Jen. This doesn't change who you are. You're still the woman I love, and nothing about that has changed." But it didn't feel that simple to me. Everything felt different now. And as much as I appreciated Jake's words, I knew that moving forward from this wasn't going to be easy. After a while, we started walking back toward the reception. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face everyone again, but I couldn't leave things like this. I needed answers. When we got back, most of the guests were gone. My parents were still there, along with Lisa, who was sitting at a table staring at her hands. I could see the guilt written all over her face, but it did little to ease the anger bubbling up inside me. I walked over to them, and they all looked up, their faces full of dread. "I want the truth," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. "All of it." My parents exchanged a nervous glance as if they were silently debating who would speak first. Finally, my dad let out a long, tired sigh. He looked older in that moment, more fragile, like the weight of years of secrets had finally crushed him. "Let's go somewhere private," he suggested quietly, nodding toward an empty corner of the reception hall. I glanced around at the remaining guests who were trying and failing to pretend they weren't watching. My heart ached at the thought that this moment, one that was supposed to be full of love and joy, was now going to be remembered for something entirely different. I followed them, Lisa trailing behind us. Jake stayed close to my side, his hand firmly in mine. Once we reached the corner, my parents sat down. I didn't think I could sit through what they were about to tell me. "We never meant to hurt you," my mom began, her voice trembling. "We always planned to tell you, but we just didn't know how." "That's not good enough," I snapped, my frustration boiling over. "You don't keep something like this from someone. You don't lie to your own child for their entire life." My mom flinched, and my dad rubbed a hand over his face, clearly struggling with his emotions. "We wanted you to have a normal life," he said. "A life where you wouldn't feel different or out of place. We thought if we told you too early, it would change everything for you, and not in a good way. So we kept putting it off, and then as the years went by, it became harder and harder to admit." "And you just never found the right time, huh?" I scoffed bitterly. "You had my whole childhood, my entire life, and you never thought I deserved to know the truth?" "It's not that simple," my mom pleaded. "You don't understand? Then help me understand," I shouted, "because right now I don't understand anything." The anger in my voice seemed to break something in her. She broke down sobbing, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the urge to comfort her. I was too angry, too hurt. "I'm so sorry, Jen," she cried, her hands covering her face. "We never wanted it to come out like this." My dad remained quiet, staring at the floor as if he didn't have the strength to face me. I turned to Lisa, who had been standing silently behind us the whole time. "How could you do this? You didn't think to pull me aside and tell me privately? You had to do it in front of everyone?" She wiped away fresh tears, her voice breaking as she responded. "I didn't plan for it to happen this way. I was going to tell you in private, but then when I saw you standing there, about to start a new life with Jake, I snapped. I couldn't stand the thought of you getting married without knowing who you really are." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just my parents who had betrayed me. Lisa had too. She had decided in that moment that she knew what was best for me and had torn my life apart because of it. "You had no right to do that," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't have the right to decide when and how I found out." "I know," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. But I couldn't hold it in anymore. It was eating me alive. Her guilt was evident, but it didn't make me feel any better. In fact, it made me feel worse. This wasn't about her guilt or her feelings. It was about my life, my identity, and the fact that it had all been built on lies. I looked at my parents again. "Who are they? My birth parents. Do you even know?" My mom nodded, sniffling as she tried to compose herself. "Yes, we know. Your birth mother was young, only 18. She couldn't keep you. She wanted you to have a stable family, so she chose us through a private adoption. We've had minimal contact with her over the years, but we do know where she is, if you want to reach out to her." The room felt like it was spinning. I had a whole other family out there, people who might know things about me, about where I came from, about who I really was. I could feel my identity slipping away from me, everything I thought I knew about myself vanishing before my eyes. "What about my birth father?" I asked, though I wasn't even sure if I wanted to know the answer. "We don't know much about him," my dad admitted. "Your birth mother didn't provide much information. All we know is that he wasn't in the picture." Of course. Another dead end. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to feel. "We understand," my mom said softly. "Take all the time you need. We'll be here when you're ready to talk." "Will you?" I asked bitterly. "Because right now it feels like I don't even know who you are." The hurt in her eyes was hard to bear, but I didn't have it in me to care at that moment. I was too hurt myself. I turned to Jake, who had been silently supporting me through this whole ordeal. "Can we go?" I asked, my voice small and broken. I just wanted to get out of there. He nodded, wrapping his arm around my shoulders. Of course. We walked out together, leaving behind the wreckage of what was supposed to be the best day of my life. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't bring myself to speak to my parents, and I barely spoke to Lisa either. I felt like I had been punched in the gut over and over, and the pain wouldn't stop. Jake tried his best to be there for me, but even he couldn't fully understand what I was going through. I didn't know how to explain it, how it felt to have your entire identity stripped away in an instant. I spent hours online, reading about adoption, trying to find stories that matched mine, hoping to find some sense of comfort or solidarity. But every story was different, and none of them felt like mine. I felt completely and utterly alone. Finally, after nearly a week of avoiding them, my mom called me. I almost didn't pick up, but some part of me couldn't resist the pull to hear her voice. "Jen?" Her voice was soft, tentative. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, but eventually agreed. We arranged to meet at a nearby cafe, away from the house, away from everything that had happened. I needed neutral ground if we were going to have this conversation. When I arrived, my mom was already there, nursing a cup of coffee and staring out the window. She looked smaller somehow, more fragile than I had ever seen her. "Hi," I said quietly, sliding into the seat across from her. She looked up, her eyes filled with sadness. "Hi." For a moment, neither of us said anything. We just sat there, the weight of everything unspoken hanging between us. "I know you're angry," she began, her voice breaking the silence. "And you have every right to be. We should have told you a long time ago. We were wrong. I was wrong." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I don't know how to forgive you for this," I admitted, my voice shaking. "I don't even know if I can." My mom's eyes filled with tears again, but this time, she didn't break down. She just nodded, accepting what I had said. "I understand. I don't expect you to forgive us right away. I just want you to know that we love you. Always have, always will. Keeping this from you was a mistake, but it wasn't because we didn't love you. It was because we loved you so much that we were afraid of losing you." "That doesn't make it better," I replied, my voice hard. "You didn't trust me. You didn't trust that I could handle the truth. Instead, you let me live a lie." She flinched at the word lie, and I could see the pain etched into her features, but I couldn't back down now. I needed her to understand the damage that had been done. "We never saw it as a lie," she whispered. "We thought of it as protecting you. But now I realize how wrong that was. You had a right to know, and we took that from you." I didn't respond immediately. I didn't know what to say. In the past week, I had gone from feeling like I had a perfect family to feeling like I didn't know these people at all. How could I forgive them for something so fundamental? How could I rebuild the trust that had been shattered? "I keep thinking about all the moments in my life," I said slowly, trying to put my feelings into words. "Moments when I could have known, when you should have told me. I'm not even sure what was real anymore." "I know," she said softly, her voice full of regret. "And I wish I could go back and change things, but I can't. All I can do now is be here for you, answer your questions, and hope that in time, you'll find a way to heal from this." My heart ached at her words, but I still wasn't sure if it was enough. I wasn't sure if anything could be enough to fix the pain I was feeling. "There's one thing I need to know," I said, my voice trembling. "Why didn't you tell me before the wedding? You had weeks after Lisa found out. Why didn't you say anything then?" She sighed, running a hand through her hair, and I could see the guilt in her eyes. "We wanted to. After Lisa confronted us, we talked about it. We knew we couldn't keep it a secret anymore, but we didn't want to ruin your wedding. We thought it would be better to wait until afterward, to let you have your special day without the weight of this hanging over you." "Well, that worked out great," I said bitterly. "Instead, I found out in front of all my friends and family, and now everything is a mess." My mom winced, nodding slowly. "You're right. We should have told you the moment Lisa found out. We made a terrible mistake, and now we're paying for it." I didn't know what else to say. There was no magic fix for this, no way to undo the damage. I had so many questions swirling in my mind, about my birth parents, about my identity, about who I was, but in that moment I couldn't bring myself to ask any of them. It was too much. Everything was too much. "I need time," I said finally, my voice small and fragile. "I don't know what I want yet, or how I'm going to feel about all of this, but I need space to figure it out." My mom nodded, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Of course. Take all the time you need. We'll be here, whenever you're ready." I stood up from the table, suddenly feeling exhausted. "I'll call you," I said, though I wasn't sure when that would be. Right now, I couldn't imagine having another conversation like this. She looked like she wanted to say more, but she didn't. She just nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. "I love you, Jen," she whispered as I walked away. The weeks that followed were a blur of confusion and emotional turmoil. I distanced myself from everyone, my parents, Lisa, even Jake at times. I felt like I needed to be alone to process everything, but being alone made the weight of it all feel even heavier. Lisa reached out several times, apologizing again and again, but I couldn't bring myself to forgive her. Not yet. It wasn't just that she had exposed the truth in such a cruel way. It was that she had made a decision for me, deciding when and how I should know something that was my right to discover on my own terms. As much as I loved her, I couldn't help but feel betrayed by her actions. Jake was patient, but I could tell he was struggling too. This wasn't how we had imagined starting our life together. We had spent months planning a future, and now, suddenly, everything felt uncertain. I wasn't even sure who I was anymore, so how could I be sure of the life we were building? Eventually, I decided to meet with my parents again. I needed answers about my birth mother, about the adoption, about everything that had been kept from me. The curiosity was gnawing at me, and while I wasn't sure if I was ready to open that door, I knew I couldn't move forward until I had more information. We sat down in their living room, just the three of us. My mom handed me a box, small but heavy with significance. Inside were letters, photos, and documents from my birth mother, things they had kept hidden from me my entire life. "She wanted you to have these," my mom said softly, her voice full of regret. "We should have given them to you sooner." I looked down at the box, my hands trembling as I opened it. Inside was the truth about my past, my real identity. I had no idea what I would find, but for the first time since that awful day at my wedding, I felt a small spark of hope. Maybe knowing the truth wouldn't be as terrifying as I thought. Maybe it would help me heal. It's been a few months since that day, and while things are still complicated, I've started to rebuild my relationships with my parents and with Lisa. It hasn't been easy. There are days when the anger still bubbles up, and I have to remind myself that healing takes time. I've also started reaching out to my birth mother. She's been open to communication, and while it's strange and overwhelming, I feel like I'm slowly piecing together the parts of myself that were missing. As for Lisa, we're working on mending our relationship. She knows she crossed a line, and she's been doing everything she can to earn back my trust. I know it will take time, but I still love her. She's my sister, and despite everything, that bond is hard to break. Jake has been my rock through it all. I don't know how I would have gotten through this without him. Our wedding day may not have gone as planned, but in a strange way, it brought us even closer. He's seen me at my worst, and he's still here, ready to face whatever comes next. I don't know where the future will take me, but I'm learning to live with the truth. The lies are behind me now, and while the scars remain, I'm hopeful that I can find peace, both with my family and with myself.